Star Trek 57, M23, take 2.
Star Trek Podcast.
Spock's body is much more dependent upon that tremendous brain for life support.
We'll have to take him with us.
Take him where?
In search of his brain, Doctor. From what you say, the moment we find it, we must restore it to his body or we lose him.
Jim, where are you going to look in this whole galaxy? Where are you going to look for Spock's brain? How are you going to find it?
I'll find it.
Even if you do, I can't restore it. I don't have the medical technique.
It was taken out. It can be put back in.
But I don't know how.
The thief that took it has the knowledge. I'll force it out of her.
Hey, guess what?
What, dude?
What?
What's happening? What's happening, man?
His brain is gone.
Oh, no.
His brain is gone.
Take him
He's
where?
He's worse than dead.
In search of his brain, doctor. Yeah, he's worse than dead.
Okay.
He's worse than dead. He has no brain.
All right.
That's worse than dead.
Alrighty, gentlemen, let's not get too far ahead of ourselves here.
Talk about a throbcast.
All right. So, hello.
Because your brain throbs. Can you think of any other organ that throbs?
Hello and welcome to the It's Got Star Trek podcast.
Because I can't.
This is episode 167
Whoa.
of the It's Got Star Trek podcast. Isn't that great?
That's like too many episodes. How do you one even do
it's
that?
a lot of episodes.
I can't believe we did that many.
Do you figure that 167? Do you figure that that's a prime number? Do you think it's a prime number? I would guess it's a prime number.
I'm willing to bet that
It's an optimal number.
All right.
It's a what? What'd you say,
An
Justin?
optimal number.
I'm gonna look it up on the internet.
All right.
Is 167 prime?
All right. So that's
Yes.
Okay. There you go. There you go.
That was an easy question.
Your face,
Apropos of nothing. There you go. So,
Well, good job. I'm into prime numbers. They're pretty cool.
I know, me too. Welcome. Some people think prime numbers are trash numbers
What?
because they're beguiling.
Beguiling. Well, I think that's what encryption is based on. Is like prime factorization, where it's something about like when you take two prime numbers and multiply them together, you get another number. So like that other number, the prime. So the factor of that number is the two prime numbers you have to multiply together to get that number, and it's like you have to be able to figure out those two numbers, and it's really hard to do. I don't know.
I can tell that you're into this.
There's something about it that's
You
crazy.
lost me, dude.
I might have gotten a few things wrong, but I think I'm basically right.
All right. Well, okay.
Prime factorization.
Sounds right to me.
Look
Whatever
it
you
up.
say, man.
So,
It's encryption is based on it.
so
Hopefully those what are those quantum computers won't destroy our encryption, but then we'll just need elliptical encryption.
okay. So Dan is all about the encryption.
It's
got encryption.
ellipses.
This week on the It's Got Star Trek podcast, to celebrate 167 episodes,
Wow, it's such a milestone. Do you think we can do that many again?
we
Let's just keep doing this forever.
we are doing a very special
Yeah,
episode. Actually,
I agree.
We're doing a very special episode that was very
this like a
specially
very-
selected.
Is this a very special episode like Blossom when she would have
No.
when she was having sex or something? It was a very special episode. And then the next one where she had sex again, but she liked it less or
no,
something.
it's not
or more,
special.
or-
This was
She had to
was-
break up.
Dude.
You had to break up with someone.
as
Are
per
you joning
our
on Blossom?
as
No way.
as per our tradition, our recent tradition, we have been allowing Dan's proprietary computer algorithm to ingest the previous week's podcast and spit out a list of episodes
Excrete.
that are somehow
It
related
ingests-
due to some
It ingests
sort of mathematical transpermutation.
It ingests a transcript and excretes an episode to watch.
Regardless, it produces this list.
So it
and-
digests it.
And this week, high up on the list was Spock's brain.
Yeah. Although.
And it's great. I mean, past tense was probably on the list too.
Yeah, well, actually, I don't remember if past tense was, but like always, DS9 was like up.
Like some of the other ones that we've done were on.
Yes, a bunch of episodes.
But
that we've
so-
already
but
done,
really,
'cause we
like-
haven't excluded those
So
from the algorithm.
I can't remember where past tense stood, but a bunch of DS9, as always. There's a lot of DS9 on there, and I'm wondering if DS9 is just a really conversational show. I was trying to think, why does that keep coming up? Is it like really
Just some people hanging out,
just
having
like-
a conversation.
yeah.
Again, Dan, as we've discussed it
because
previously,
so maybe that's why it sounds like our podcast is because
you
we're
were asking
conversational.
you were asking these very interesting questions while being the only person in a position to even offer us an idea because you are the keeper of the algorithm. You know the mathematical transformations that you're applying to the digital
Well,
bits.
I think
the algorithm.
we couldn't comment on it.
I think you mistake my question. My question is,
Are you asking us to reverse engineer the algorithm
no.
based off the results?
No. Look, a lot of times you'll notice in this podcast, a lot of times I ask questions, and I'm not asking questions simply because I expect someone to know.
Some of them are rhetorical questions.
It's just meant to make you think.
Okay.
Make you think. No, but they're questions that I
You're
want.
making Jesse bored.
Make you think.
No, look, I
He's
ask
like singing
questions.
songs.
No,
He's like humming.
They're not. No, they're not. Hold on. Hold on. Yeah, we're almost done, Jesse. We're almost done. They're not rhetorical in the sense that I do want to know the answer, but I don't expect. I'm not asking it being like, Patrick, knower of all, can you tell me the answer to this? I'm not like that or something. Or Jesse, knower of all, can you scratch
Yes.
my face?
All right.
And
I can't reach across.
So the point I'm trying to make is like I'm bringing it up, and that's what I'm postulating right now is perhaps DS9 is very conversational.
Okay,
Maybe I
well-
should just word it differently.
Or we can.
Maybe it's my fault. Maybe I'm communicating.
I think perhaps
poorly.
you can develop some sort of test you could run,
Science.
an experiment to test this hypothesis, and then you can report back on it in the future.
It sounds like you use science.
Yeah, but we have a lot of other things to take care of.
Yes,
before we even get to talking about the show.
Oh,
so
no.
first of all, I mentioned a few weeks back that there was really only one episode of Deep Space Nine that I didn't like. I actively don't like.
All right, yeah. I keep meaning to look over a list of episodes and try to figure it out, but I forget to.
Well, we had a lot of people on social media guessing, particularly on Twitter,
Do tell.
guessing, and in the process of all those people guessing, I was recalling, I was like, they're actually
more.
there's a bunch of Deep Space Nine episodes that are not so great, but this episode and it's not something I argue from an objective standpoint, but from a subjective standpoint, to me it's just the most sort of useless episode in a lot of ways, even though there's a few nice things in there.
Well, I mean, there is no objective answer to that question.
Of course, I'm just I'm stating that for any new audience who might
that is
mistakenly
it's-
think that we're just sort of declaring.
And I actually
views.
I agree that it's important. It may seem redundant or tedious to make that distinction, but it's important to that we keep reminding ourselves that opinions are different than fact because it's easy to forget.
Yes.
People think it's
I thought opinions were like assholes.
Yeah, everyone has to wipe them after they poop out of them.
Okay. So anyway,
Okay.
lots of people guessed, and we did have a winner. Somebody who did guess.
Oh,
it.
really?
Yes, it was at Unplanned Trek. From
No
the
shit.
From the Unplanned
You're
Star
fucking
Trek.
with me right now.
No, I'm not.
Are you fucking with me right now?
No, you should pay attention to the Twitter feed more. They guessed that it was The Muse, which is a 4th season episode, I believe. Maybe it's 20, something like that. Anyway, it's about Jake being visited by like an alien who's giving him creative powers by sucking up his brain juices or whatever. And then there's another thing with Odo and Waxana, which I probably love, and I'm just not remembering because
that
the
one.
A plot is like.
Yeah,
But
Waxana and Odo. Yeah, she like wants Odo.
Yeah, but anyway,
Yeah, that's when he's all like, I don't eat.
maybe what
Yeah,
we'll do
right.
is to refresh my memory, because I honestly haven't seen that episode in forever. Give it a fair shake. Maybe we'll discuss it sometime in the coming weeks.
I had forgotten about that episode, but now that you mention it, I'm starting. It's
For
starting to
good
come
or
back to me.
ill, we might have to override the algorithm and take a look.
Hey man, I'm
Take
flexible.
take a look at that episode.
we got it.
coming up sometime
We
soon.
had a suggestion that we do a Crusher episode.
Yes, we do need to do that. So that's with the Crusher convo. We want to wait until they put out their conversation, and then we can listen to that conversation because that's a newer podcast that's just out. So there's all sorts of fun stuff going on in the Star Trek podcast world. So
Exciting,
go to
really.
Star Trek Twitter and check it out because there's a ton of awesome programs out there. All right.
Where the news is 20 years old.
Regarding this particular program, we also must remind our listeners that coming up soon,
Always wear your seatbelt.
Star Trek Picard comes
Don't
back
drive distracted.
for the 3rd and presumably final season, even though there's been scuttlebutt about Patrick Stewart saying he wants to do more in some form or another. But this is advertised as the third and final
Well, I want to
season
do
of
more. I
They should
want to do
do-
more.
They should do an animated.
Is this Picard? He goes like, is this Patrick Stewart? He's like, well, actually, I want to do more. No, that's not Picard. at
No,
all.
that was spot on. What are you talking about? That was great.
Well, I want to do more. I want to do more episodes of Star Trek: The Next Generation.
But he's not from like London.
Yeah. So okay.
What? Blimey! No, that was too much. I'm sorry. That was just too much. That last blimey, I didn't need to go there. I want to do more. By Jove, I want to do more.
Please, sir, may I have some more?
Please.
Please, may I have some more? Please. No, I don't want to. I was about to slip into the Nell
Data
voice.
and Riker.
You never want to go into the Nell voice.
You guys
if
are
can
too
avoid it.
much.
All right, yes, we are too much, and we're going on too long.
Data and Riker.
The whole point of me
Chickabay?
bringing that up.
Chickabay?
Yes, the Chickabay in the
Oh
wing.
no, that's
Nell
upsetting.
is an upsetting movie.
There's a
Okay.
few upsetting scenes in that.
All right, so Picard's coming back.
Picard.
Season 3 starts on February 16th. So but we're just telling you now, even though these are evergreen podcasts, you could be listening in any order, who knows? But
Evergreen.
if you're listening when this came out,
Except if you're listening to our Discovery episode.
soon we are going to be, what?
If you're listening to the season of Discovery, I mean, you have to hear them out of order.
Except when we
So
talk
they're
about
not-
topical topics.
They're
Not for seasons 3 and 4.
Well, all Discovery episodes are kind of in order.
Okay, no. You know what I meant? I meant that. Never mind. I was talking about the podcast. So anyone could be listening. Somebody could be like, "Ooh, Spock's brain. I want to hear a conversation about that." So they load it up 100 years from the future.
Yeah, and I'm saying
and
that,
they're not
like-
watching in a particular order.
And I'm saying that they can't do it as
Like in the
easily
year
with
2000.
Discovery.
I understand now. It's
Unless
just
they
like out of
started,
the
yeah.
blue, it sort of
Sorry.
threw me off.
I'm
a little
sorry.
bit.
I will be quiet.
Made me a little mentally
I'm
uncomfortable.
I'm throwing things off kilter.
Okay, so look, all I was saying was that we will be covering week to week. We will be covering the new season of Picard, and we don't know when the other shows start up, but we'll be covering those as well. But anyway, just a heads up. You just get ready. Just get ready, and get a little excited. Get a little excited. A new season of Captain Picard.
No season of Star Trek.
Number 1. I'm Captain Picard. I'm number 1.
Data and Riker.
I have fish. I have fish in my room. Number 1.
I have fish in my broom. Oh no!
My number one fish.
I have fish in my broom again.
Talking about fish in your broom.
How did I get all this fish in my broom?
Okay. All right. Let's talk about Spock's brain. That's been plenty of dilly-dallying. We've done exactly the prescribed amount.
Okay,
We've
got
done it exactly the perfect amount that just aggravates people, but
Yeah.
was engaging enough that it's not going to cause too much trouble.
And it was mostly on topic of Star Trek, so that
Mostly.
so that's usually
there was a brief detour about encryption.
sometimes. Yeah, well, okay, yeah, that's true.
All right.
Brief. I don't know if I would say it.
All right.
It was a
So,
lifetime.
Star Trek, the original series, Spock's brain.
What a lazy episode.
Okay.
Oh, it's so silly.
All right. So there's a lot to discuss here, and I figured what
man.
we should start with a very brief laying down of the context.
Context.
The contemporaneous.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Contemporary.
Third season.
Contemporary. Did I ever tell you that time I like serving on this woman
Yes.
from New York, and
Yes.
she's like, "I like the rotisserie chicken with
Yes.
French fries, please."
Yes, I think you've mentioned
You
it.
should
on
go home and play Super Mario Bros.
Mario, I love Mario.
You've done that bit on the podcast, I believe.
Have I done the rotisserie chicken before?
I think so.
I
believe
love
so.
Mario. So this is a different person that was like, she was also from New York, but she was like, I love Super Mario.
All right. So the
What a
context
coincidence.
around season 3 of Star Trek: The Original Series.
Nothing wrong with that.
As the lore goes, NBC was planning on canceling the show after season 2, but a letter writing campaign by is it Bijo and John Trimble,
That sounds like
supported
made up
by
name.
Sounds like you're making it up.
supported by I think it's a contraction for like something Jane or something. Anyway, Gene Roddenberry supported their efforts. They wrote and it's true, they got fans to write well over 100,000 letters to NBC, and that helped change NBC heads' minds. That's at least the way the lore goes. Other readings of the history
And
suggest
it was a
that-
later. They gave him a later time slot.
well, like what happened was apparently NBC was never planning on canceling Star Trek at that point. The ratings had been declining, but partly because it was on at 8:30 on Friday nights, and so that's like it's got a younger audience, and their younger audience is out canoodling.
Yeah.
They're out canoodling. They're
Going
out
to sock hops and
smoking
things.
cigarettes,
Left-handed cigarettes.
going to sock hops, getting into the fight clubs with the razor blades down in somebody's basement, down in the warehouse district. They were doing that type of stuff on Friday nights.
Well, they were getting rumbles where they tie their wrists together and hold a knife in the other hand.
No, but they tie their wrists together and they cover it in glue and then they stick it in razor blades.
No, you're thinking of Kickboxer.
Yeah, I mean, I'm
with Tong Po and Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Well, I'm just folding it into the motif.
Yeah.
Regardless.
Did they get in their cars and do drag racing?
Yeah,
precisely.
For some reason they had to drag race off the side of a cliff and they had to jump out of the car before it went off the cliff. Like every
Dead
drag
Man's Curve.
Every drag race ended in their car being destroyed.
Makeout point. They're all hanging out at makeout point. Everyone's making out in the same place.
Don't get dead end point and makeout point mixed up. Don't do it.
Right,
Don't
But
ever
they're right
do it.
next to each other.
Oh fuck! I didn't think of that.
It gets messy.
Okay. So that was just a colorful way to set the tone.
Well, I don't know.
Because apparently what happens, NBC wasn't actually going to cancel it. There's no evidence that they were going to cancel it, but the letter writing campaign did convince them that, okay, there is an audience out here. We should, try to help them out. They were going to move them to Mondays, but the producers of Laugh-In wouldn't let them do that.
Laugh-In.
That was on a Monday.
Yeah.
You got to laugh on a Monday.
And in the end,
That's
they ended
so
up
weird.
putting it, the third season went to 10 o'clock at night on a Friday night. And they're like beyond canoodling. They're at the next stages, whatever the next stages were.
That's
back
like
in the 50s.
nowadays. There's nothing on at 10 o'clock.
They're going
on
to-
Friday.
they're going to
It's
second
like,
base.
It's like whatever. It's some kind of filler, right?
And so
I don't know what's on TV.
that was a
anymore.
problem.
Exactly.
That was a problem that Star Trek had in the third season. Another problem was the budget. They slashed the budget by a fairly significant portion of the per episode budget.
Okay, now as the
So that's an issue
But wait,
that I
but-
think is apparent in this episode.
I don't know, because if you watch at the very beginning, Sulu has this mechanized view screen that slowly pops out of the
it's
console.
true. That was new.
And is really weird and
It
impractical.
all goes like
Yeah,
It
there's
was
a
all
lot
like
of
it was
really
all like
weird.
slow, like it's like, wow, this is so convenient. It's
Yeah.
coming right to. So I was like, wow, they really spent a lot of money on effects. I mean, why else would they have that thing?
Maybe that was always able to do that, or maybe
Yeah,
they spent
maybe.
3 years getting that to work.
Right? Maybe it
there
just
was
never worked.
another. There
before
was
then,
another
yeah.
ship out there that shipped from that planet.
Yeah, but that was with the CG. I don't remember what the original.
I would
looked
like
like.
to.
okay,
I would
yeah.
love to see a side by side comparison of the new and the old.
They have that for most of the episodes. If you do a web search
Well, I want a side, like literal side by side.
of the whole episode.
Oh no, just these special effects like split screen, so I can look.
Yeah, no, I'm saying people have made YouTube videos and
Ah,
stuff to
well-
do precisely that.
Well,
It's worth checking out.
it's like,
Slap you in the face and call you Charlie.
yeah, exactly.
All right,
Seems like
Charlie.
The internet always has things that I think of already.
All right.
I should have thought of them earlier.
Yes, precisely. I've been telling you that for years.
because it's human knowledge.
Right.
So
Anyway, so you're saying the budget was
I'm just
low
saying,
and, yeah.
season 3. Also, Roddenberry pulled back. He lost a little bit of interest in the show at this point. I think he was more focused on marketing and stuff. So
Did
that,
he have some like personal issues, Gene Roddenberry? Didn't I see I thought I saw him.
I'm
like,
pretty sure.
He was a
Documentary.
character,
We
yeah.
would need to do some research
No.
because we don't want to besmirch people
No.
with half understood
Yeah,
facts. But
I don't mean like he was an asshole or anything.
I think he was also an asshole. But like, there's nice assholes. There's the assholes that you like to have hang out and party, but then you're just like, oh man.
There's the assholes
This
that
guy's an
create
asshole.
Star Trek.
Yeah. There's a lot of assholes, unfortunately, involved in the creation.
You're right,
of
though. I shouldn't
Star
just
Trek.
go saying that willy nilly because I don't know. I just thought I saw it on a special,
well-
on a documentary.
And there's resources out there to learn more. But all that is to say that now we have this third season, which is not devoid of entertainment. There's some good stuff in there.
We've done a few already.
Yeah, but like it did go in a weird direction. There was less money. I think there was a certain level of disinterest on the actors' parts almost. I think that shines through a little bit in this episode where some of the line readings are like, what's going on here?
Yeah.
Like you're, the way your tone is
and
shifting
it's
and
a
stuff.
It's a stinky script.
Well, yes.
Like
that too.
sometimes, like they're actually doing the best they can with the script. It's kind of
Absolutely, and I'm certainly not trying to denigrate the actors. It's just I get the impression they were like, I don't know. It just seemed like it was a harder job for them. At that stage.
Yeah, it did seem that way. Yeah,
For one reason or another. Now I don't believe this was the first produced. It was the first aired in season 3, but I think it was the 6th episode. It was produced.
Jeez, why is there
There's something
continuously
weird with Scotty's hair. He's got like some
Yeah,
extra.
all of
poof.
them have weird hair this season.
What's
actually.
going on? Like, there's even into season 3, it was out of order with production and chrono, like when it was
It was
shown.
the '60s.
It was just
man.
the way episodic TV worked.
I thought-
there was no real. They didn't care about this, the order of things necessarily.
So yeah, okay.
It was like, what
Makes
would
sense.
play better? Because sometimes they would they would be like, oh, we need to film this outside, so we have to film this episode in earlier. It doesn't mean they want to show it earlier. Maybe it's a story that's more suited to another time period.
So there were some goofy lines, of course, about like, brain's missing and you got to find his brain and that kind of stuff. But I thought there were some good, because I'm all about when they make good faces. There were some good faces in this episode.
Yes.
Like during the montage where McCoy was like was forgetting his surgery, like after he started forgetting, and then there was a montage where he's all sweating. He's like doing his like single eyebrow like arch to the intent. He looks so goofy, and like when
or when he's wearing the fucking magic helmet and like
well there
and he's like just like ooh.
yeah, well there was a scene with Scotty was I can't remember exactly where it was. Maybe it was the time when Kirk was looking at, was it Kara? He's like trying to convince her to let Spock's brain go. He's he's like, can you let Spock's brain go? She's like, no, I don't think I want to. He's like, come on, you got to do it. She's like, no. He's like, you better do it. And she's like, no, I said no. And it's like, but then I think during this whole scenario, there was a shot of Spock or Scotty like sort of pursing his lips and going, making this sort of like weird sinister face. And of course, the first time we see like zombie Spock was terrifying. She's like, what the fuck?
McCoy can't do the brain surgery, but he can make fucking zombie Spock Frankenstein.
Okay, now that brings up the appearance of
that fucking whole situation, that controller.
Look,
oh my god.
Let's put some structure around this conversation, because that first appearance of Spock and how jarring it was, I think calls to attention a major issue in this episode was just like the editing was wild.
Yeah.
The editing was so jumpy and weird, and certain scenes went on for so long and just kept saying the same thing over and over again.
Yes.
Right? This was a 15-minute idea that was stretched out to 50 minutes.
And like almost nothing was explained.
No, and there was all these tantalizing ideas that they left on the table.
Like the whole 3-planet situation.
Yes.
Like, what was the whole fucking point of that? I was like,
Yeah.
it's like first of all, you got 3 M-class planets like right next to each other, which seems ridiculous.
The thing is Sigma Draconis is a dwarf star, and it's only got 85% of the mass of the sun.
Wait, how'd you know that?
I looked it up.
From like a real life thing or a Star Trek thing?
Yeah, in real life.
In real life, okay.
And they're not sure if it has any planets.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that. That's fascinating.
Like it might.
So there's these 3 planets that are all M-class, and they're all like
They're all right next to each other.
Sounds like the beginning of a joke.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, so you got these 3 planets.
But even it would be
one's
rare.
in the 1500s, one's present day, and one's in a glacial age. You kept saying glacial.
But to have like what do they call it? Like the habitable zone or the
the habitable zone.
like the distance from the
The
sun
Goldilocks
where you
zone.
can have
the
a
Goldilocks
nice
zone.
Earth-like planet. You wouldn't be able to cram that many planets into there, would you?
Probably not, but it would partly depend on the dynamics of the sun.
But maybe
they're
they're little teeny class M planets.
Yeah.
No, they weren't. They weren't because they were
They look good
They were
sized. They look good.
Earth-sized.
Yeah,
they were
right.
Earth-sized. I mean, we can
And one of
only
them had a
assume that-
moon.
One had a moon.
What a moon! They had a moon.
And
One of them was in
they
the-
call this a moon.
One of them was
So-
in the 15th century.
So I guess they brought up an interesting sort of like conundrum of like, well, we don't have much time, we got to choose one.
The
But like,
16th century.
But
16th
like,
century.
Kirk was like, well, I'll just like go with this one. Chekhov's like, we should go to that, and Sulu's like, we should go to that, and Kirk's like, well, let's go to this.
Yeah, but wasn't there something weird about the ice planet?
Well,
like, that was
That
pointed
had
out?
an energy source coming from it.
So precisely. So to me, I agree with you, Dan. The
Yeah.
writer's goal was to set up this idea of like, ooh, Kirk is gonna like go with his gut or
Right,
whatever it was gonna
yeah.
be, and go with the least likely option, which is the one that has caveman people on it. But
Ridiculous.
the problem is that's not what happened. What happened
was
was there was 2 planets that didn't look like it could be possible, and then there was this other planet where there was some shady ass
Yeah,
energy
right.
signal coming out. I was
Right.
like, yeah, I'm gonna go look at that
Right.
one. That looks like it has
Right.
future stuff in there somehow. That just
But everybody's
makes
like, oh,
sense.
Right.
doesn't make any sense, but here it is.
Yeah, and then Chekhov has a completely useless question. He's like, Sulu's like, a hunch, Captain. Kirk's like, a hunch, Mr. Sulu. And then Chekhov goes, what if you guess wrong, Captain? It's like, what the fuck kind of question is that?
Whose side are you on?
Yeah, right, exactly.
Captain Kirk is like, then I guess Spock's fucked.
Yeah, Spock dies. What do you want me to say?
That's the deal.
If I gotta guess something, you know.
I guess we'll be
then
requisitioning
Chekhov gets promoted.
a new first officer.
Yeah, right. But yeah, so the whole thing was pretty odd. I don't know if you wanted to go more about the way it was shot and things like that.
No, it was just that there was the visual editing, and then there was the sound editing also. I thought the sound mix was a little off to me. Like they didn't record all their voices as well as they usually do. Like when Spock would turn around and stuff, like, you know, his voice would get all muffled. I don't know. Just like, not just Spock, the characters in general. Because we've been watching a lot of TOS, and the sound quality has always been very good. I just found there was a few things that just seemed a little bit off. The music was great, though.
The music, I was just about to say, the music was really cool. I liked how when they went to Caveman Land, they played these marimbas to make it sound like some kind of. I was picturing some like Flintstones playing like
that was so silly.
Picturing the Flintstones playing like dinosaur ribs as a marimba or something like that. You know, but then when they had Spock, like when they were cranking Spock around, and there was some kind of like crankety gear wood sounding like that was some kind of instrument going yeah right, and it was like Spock moving around. It was so cheesy, but it was kind of awesome. Like the music made it like work.
Yes, the music was excellent.
Yeah,
it did a lot of heavy lifting.
Yeah. What were you saying, Jesse?
Oh well, the cavemen were so silly, and they had like those like funny like caveman clubs that are all like these like cone things.
Yeah, and they were throwing
the clubs.
And they all had some kind of like long, like Shaggy Beatles haircut. Like,
they were like Renaissance haircuts.
That's what it was.
Right.
That's what it was.
Renaissance.
They were Renaissance cavemen.
And they must have
they
must have gone into the NBC costume department, and they were like, "No, your show's going to get canceled, so you don't get to use the good caveman wigs. Just wear a bunch of these fucking like Tudor, kind of guys." I will say, however, I was legitimately freaked out at the initial caveman attack. When at first it was silly because Kirk is trying to tell Chekhov and everybody to spread out, and they're all doing their whole thing. But when the cavemen actually attacked, it's silly, but it was like, whoa, they're throwing all sorts of rocks, and they jumped up on top of other rocks, and there was a bunch of them. There's a whole bunch of them.
It's kind of like 2001 or something.
A little bit, except with tall, white, goofy Renaissance dudes.
And I know that they had like a universal translator, but they made them sound surprisingly eloquent. I guess it's better. I guess it's better than
no.
It's like givers of pain and delight. It's like, do they live here with you? No, they come. They give pain and delight.
Like, what the hell, dude?
Now, I guess on the other hand, it's kind of cheesy when they make them sound super dumb. It's like with the universal translator, they're like, me, caveman, you person, what go on now? But at the same time, like,
death by Unga Bunga.
Right. They were
super Unga Bunga.
He had a beautiful, deep theatrical voice. It was a little,
he was an
actor.
It was anachronistic. It was quite literally anachronistic.
They come for all like us.
Yes.
Women? I like when he says, when he's like, the females of your kind, your words say nothing. Don't you have a male? Male? A companion? Will you take us where we can find the others? No one wants to find them. Anyways, when he's talking about like not knowing about where his companion is, Kirk just kind of gives like, he's like, you don't have companions? Yeah. And Kirk just gives this sort of like, I don't know, it's not a smile, but this kind of like, oh, I don't know.
It's a flummoxed look of like, like that kind of, I don't understand where you're coming from.
Right.
What are you even talking about? And this is such an alien concept to me.
And it's like, it's almost like he doesn't really want to know more, because like the next question, of course, is like, how do you procreate? You know?
Well, yes. Now here is another confusing aspect about this episode, because they've set up this tantalizing idea that for one reason or another, which we can get to. There's different motivations suggested, but anyway, it's unclear. The idea of the women and the men somehow being separated in some fashion. There's an interesting idea there. And it seems that the women are selecting or kidnapping men,
right,
using food traps and shiny weapon traps to get the men. Presumably, I'm guessing the implication is for their own pleasure and procreation purposes.
Yeah, that's what
I can't. I'm not imagining anything else. Maybe there was. Maybe I don't want to.
Where did they get the other brains?
Yes, we don't know where they got the other brains.
Apparently, you can only get them.
That's one of the unexplained.
Didn't they say it would last 10,000 years?
Yes, for some reason. Yeah, I mean, we should get into that later. Okay. But yeah, the whole thing. So the men.
The sex thing didn't make sense because that dude did not seem to not only did not know what quote unquote women were, but didn't seem to understand the concept of like screwing around, canoodling.
Yeah. He all he knew was like pain and.
But if they
And
get
delight.
get kidnapped, do they then canoodle? Do they figure out how to canoodle?
So yeah, it was confusing because so first of all, this whole sort of it was an interesting. You could take an interesting metaphorical view of this and say like this is a civilization of simple-minded women controlled by a male intelligent brain.
Yes,
okay,
good point.
And that this male and
Simple-minded.
it's meant to. And this civilization is meant to deceive other men of lesser brain power. So you have one powerful, smart man controlling a bunch of
And they're not allowed to know anything unless they have to do something, and then they don't get to remember it.
And so right. So I'm giving the sort of the structure of like leading to like this whole sex thing.
Ooh.
So
let's get ready.
so
Strap in, folks.
So you basically have this like one intelligent male mind controlling these simple-minded women, like I said, and then they're deceiving other men who aren't as smart.
But they were all of them deceived.
Yet the women are can give men pleasure and pain, right? So like that's like your standard male complaint is like, oh, these women here, I love them so much, can't live with them.
I
can't
like
live with
that
them.
interpretation.
You know?
I did not suss that out. But that's maybe not what was intended. But
Maybe
that's,
not,
But that's what was coming across.
And and the interesting thing about what is intended is maybe they didn't intend it, but it can still be a reflection of their way of thinking
their
at the time.
their internal biases and cultural structures.
And so these men that they had captured, right? Notice all those men were completely placated, right? So I guess the what I took it as the implication being is like the men until they feared these women because they made them feel strange, weird things, and they were confused and scared by them. But then when the women brought the men in and had sex with them, the men became placated and did whatever it is the women wanted them to do. And the men from the outside were afraid of becoming that, even though in the end they would have liked it in the end. Now that last part is a little bit of a stretch.
Or at the very least, the men from the outside had no clue what was going
I think
on.
actually, and I think honestly,
It
It's a
seemed
little-
pretty bewildering.
It's a little like reverse Plato's allegory of the cave.
right?
Because it's like the people who are outside of the cave are the ones who aren't in on what's going down.
So, and I think that's actually the more likely scenario is they don't know what's going on. But then I got confused as to how does this, how do they keep their ancestral line or what's the bloodline? I don't know.
Are you saying how do they avoid incest?
Well, okay. Well, there's always that question.
Okay,
but,
I thought that's what you were getting
But
at.
I mean, that's been a question since the story of Adam and Eve, right? Like, but
How do they keep their civilization?
how do they keep their civilization going? Because they capture these men. These men are placated and sort of
then they make
civilized,
babies?
become civilized to an extent.
babies,
They
and then
make babies.
They put some of the men out.
Well, they use them for muscle.
So
right?
right. So do they? But how do they get these men back out in the wild again? How do you have this? How do you sustain this culture of ignorant?
Maybe they eat some of them.
Of ignorant men. How do you sustain this culture of ignorant men that don't know what's going on? Those men must have seen new babies introduced to back into their culture, right? Wouldn't they?
Well, yeah, it just doesn't.
When they
it's
say,
so-
yeah, wouldn't those guys?
Just to me, the premise of men remaining ignorant is not particularly far fetched.
Well, no, but I'm just, look. Look,
Well,
seriously,
sure,
no,
but,
look.
like-
If you're a bunch of stupid men,
they still know like about
No, if you're still a bunch of stupid cavemen type kind of guys or whatever, I'm making a lot of assumptions, and then some of your men get captured.
you're
like,
gonna know about reproduction
you're gonna-
and making more people.
Because if your line is going to continue, then some of those babies would get reintroduced back into your culture, in your civilization. You'd be like, oh, the bringers of pleasure and delight and pain are bringing us back some babies. Like
Maybe they just kill all the
know?
boy babies. The implications
But
of
how
this
does but they
are
kill
so
the,
confusing
But
that
if
they
they
could...
but if they killed the boy
Exactly.
babies, then they wouldn't continue the line of cavemen. How does
I'm
how
saying
does this caveman line
you keep
continue?
a few boy. Look, do I have to spell it out for you? You keep a few boy babies around. You just graze them for the purpose of unga bunga. But then the other ones you just cull them like with chicks, like with non-egg laying chicks.
But that's not my question. My question is, how are those babies reintroduced back into the caveman society?
Look, you're taking it. I can tell that you feel very strongly about this.
No,
I do too. However, we must understand that we can't get an answer to this because it's ludicrous. They have not provided enough information.
No,
That's
and this is
part of the
what-
problem
well,
with this
that's
episode.
one of the
is it doesn't make any
things,
fucking
man.
sense.
No, this is one of those points, and like this is a perfect example of when I said when I'm asking a question, I'm not expecting anyone to particularly have an
Yes.
answer. I'm just expressing.
it's a question.
I'm presenting something to. I'm presenting an idea for people to sort of muse and
That was very good patience.
and sort of roll around in their brain and sort of muse about and being like, how does this happen? I'm not like Jesse Patrick, come and give me an answer now. I demand. You are my Google.
Right.
You know?
You're just asking a
I'm
question
just
for the
asking
ages.
the question exactly.
Thank
you.
And rhetorically,
It's not rhetorical.
rhetorically or otherwise, I do think that's because these elements are not as tightly written
Right.
and tightly coherent.
That's why I'm saying a lazy fucking episode.
As is true for even some like ridiculous Star Trek episodes. This is less coherent by
Yes.
far than
Oh,
on
yes.
average.
There are plenty of examples.
It's just throwing
of
a lot of ideas out there, a lot of individual aspects of which are good, except that they don't link to each other in any way.
Yeah,
and it's ridiculous. But the most important thing is that we take a break,
Oh, yes.
and then when we return from the break, the second most important thing is that we continue
Was that Wayne's
our
World?
conversation.
Yeah,
yes,
sort
he's
of.
doing the Wayne's World
I'm
doodly
sorry.
doops. Okay, we will be right back.
Stealing shit.
No, that was funny.
Okay, we're back. We're back. So, before we get back into our conversation, we did have a few comments on Twitter
Oh, no.
Few comments on the Twitter
regarding this
What
episode.
did
They're
these
like,
people say?
they're like, it's got Star Trek. We hate you. Go fuck yourself.
No,
Why are you guys so
we
stupid?
never get
all the
messages like
time?
that. Everyone's very civil.
Right.
Everyone's super
Everybody's
nice.
like, you're my number one podcast.
Hey, Willie.
But Kate Mora at JediCat71 says that this episode, Spock's Brain, is my guilty pleasure Trek episode. It's so goofy, and I'm always amazed at how the cast manages to play the story straight.
Yeah, really.
Which I do think is a good point. That, we were commenting a little bit. I think that they're having troubles, but it is impressive that they're able to get through a lot of these story elements.
They're holding it.
Some of the stuff they have to do. And then one other comment was from Subcommander Tall at Subcommander T on
Word.
Twitter.
Subcommander Tall.
And they said, it's a dumb episode, but has good moments. The conversation on the bridge between Kirk and just the junior officers is unprecedented. The Fred Steiner
Wait,
score.
what is what?
I think after Spock is like gone, when they're
He's got to talk to somebody.
Spock's been in the sick bay or something. They're all like chatting with that. What's going on? Regardless, the Fred Steiner score has some great parts. Totally agree.
Yeah.
And the episode seems less goofy considering it was written not long after the first heart transplant. And that I think it's
That's a good point.
I don't necessarily agree that it makes it less goofy, but I do think it's useful to situate this episode in the context of a heart transplant, which prior to, probably 5 years prior was considered hilariously unthinkable, and now was happening.
Well, kind of
so
like-
that extrapolating that to the 23rd century, you're going to say, okay, now you can do a brain removal.
And it was like that episode where there was the children, the forever children that lived.
Miri,
yeah.
forever children, not
Where-
quite.
That was the
forever
one you
children.
guys did.
But right, and it was the point was brought up. It's like back at this time there was a certain way that was thought of, how children are children and adults are adults, and separate them, and just this idea. It's always important to sort of go back and try to remember what was going on at the time to try to make. Maybe it doesn't make the episode make more sense, but you see more of a reason behind it happening.
Well, and then there's another aspect which is going on here, and we've seen this before, particularly in TOS, which is they are still proceeding from a framework that societal and cultural evolution happens in a linear progressive form. They make that error when they're referring to the planets. They're like, this is a code for 1450s. This
These
is
guys
code
are
for
very primitive.
2030s.
Yeah.
It's a nonsensical statement. And the idea that certain technology could,
1450s,
like, yes,
come on.
there are some things that technology does build up on itself, but there's no guarantee to the particular orders. In other words, it's not like you rewind the clock and it all does it in exactly the same order again, right?
Right,
Things
yeah.
things can happen.
that's
in a
not the
variety of
first. That's
different
not the
ways.
only time that Star Trek sort of
No,
talk like
TOS
that.
does that a lot, but other Star Treks have done that as well. And the thing is that that's not just an issue for when they describe these planets, when they're trying to suss out where these people are. It's also like they're talking about the people's culture peaking and then retrogressing. And again, I think that's a really interesting idea.
I think that was actually one of the more interesting
Yes.
ideas.
and I wish they had explored it more.
Yeah, it didn't quite hit the mark, but when they were talking about the mind's regressing because they've got this brain that thinks for them, I mean, you can definitely find some
Yes.
it's
An analogy.
It's topical in a way.
Word,
But
yeah.
it brings up the classic question, and again, you can kind of situate it in the 1960s mindset, although I'm sure this mindset still exists and has existed for a while, which is remember that whole thing where it's like you have to learn how to do all this math because you won't have a calculator. And it's like, oh no, actually everyone has a calculator all the time.
And it can make graphs for you.
But that doesn't mean you don't learn math. It means you can learn different math, or you can go further than you might otherwise because you have tools that can do a lot of the heavy lifting for you, like certain analyses, like regression, multiple regression analysis, statistical analysis. You can't do that without a computer.
Well, right.
It's like you used to, okay,
But it's very powerful.
I can build a house like with these materials, but with these materials I can build a cathedral.
Yeah, and
Or I can have slaves build a
Or I can have somebody build it fucking for
steal
me.
money from the populace.
well, an analogy to software development, which doesn't apply
I can sell indulgence.
which doesn't just apply to software development, but it's you get to a higher level of abstraction is what it is.
Yeah.
When you get to a lower level, when you get lower level programming, you get the lowest level you get is the binary, and then below that is the actual circuit. Below that is the actual
binary.
Is that the actual circuitry, but on the software level, the binary is the lowest level. And so as you go to higher levels of abstraction, you don't have to worry about those minute calculations. All those are put together for you. If you didn't do it, that's how progress happens. And if you didn't take some of these things for granted, like you wouldn't have the same kind of progress.
Yet again and again we do see stories like this one, which is at least one interpretation of this story, which is the idea being if you offload your thinking too much, you become a stupid society.
Yeah.
And it's probably making comparisons to watching too much television or listening to those floppy-haired Beatles too much. You know, that sort of, you know what I'm saying?
And in the 1920s, it was reading those books.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It used to be
or
reading
bicycles.
reading
People
novels
were opposed to bicycles.
and in the late
velocipedes.
In the late 1800s, novels were considered a scourge that was ruining the minds of the youth.
Yeah.
Because they were sitting under trees reading novels with their noses
It
in
was like
novels
perverse.
all day.
But I will say, and people have said this a lot, and I think almost a lot of people can relate to this, is like having, GPS and directions, MapQuest on your phone.
MapQuest.
Google Maps, I know. I called it MapQuest for the longest time.
MapQuest was like you had to print it out off your printer.
Yes.
Yeah, until finally, like, our friend James was like, "You mean Google Maps?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, you're right at this point." But
It's
like,
made life easier.
It's made life so much fucking easier, but I don't remember where shit is as much anymore.
Yes.
Honestly, like it's like I don't have to remember that stuff.
And that's the key. You don't have to remember.
I don't have to, but am I gaining am I progressing as a person as a result?
I think
It's just making my life easier and more convenient.
to me, what's interesting about
I'm saving some time on maps,
look,
but
it's a double-edged sword, to use a very tired and hackneyed cliche.
It cuts you this way and it cuts you that way.
And it's a little bit we don't know exactly what's going to happen because
two edges.
if you there is evidence that suggests that people used to have better memories for things when they weren't writing things down. When everything was an oral tradition, that there was a benefit to you, and not only just a benefit, you just practiced using your memory more often.
do you want me
It
to
was just
teach
a
you
standard thing?
It's like those dudes in New Guinea, and they know like all the plants in the jungle,
Right.
and which ones are poisonous, and which ones you can eat, and which ones do this, and which ones do that.
do you want me to teach you my oral tradition?
I'm hesitant to say yes, but I'm curious.
I'm kind of
Curious what'll
about
happen
that.
if I don't.
I just want to say please and thank you all the time.
Just please, oh,
That does aggravate a number of people,
yeah.
especially if you're traveling abroad.
Yeah.
sir or madam.
Yeah.
Madam.
I had a person, she was from Russia, and she was like, it's annoying how much Americans say.
You had a person.
I had a person.
You should provide some
Maybe
context.
I worked with a person, and she
you
was
worked with a person.
and she was from Russia, and she says in Russia people don't like. I don't know. I'm just repeating what she said, but what she was like is she's like, Americans say please and thank you too much. It's all this fake politeness, and it's bullshit. And in Russia we never say that.
I'm always
Russians
very
are just
sincere.
amazingly
Now-
rude.
I'm always very sincere when I say thank you. I can understand why it would aggravate people.
yeah, and I get her point, but I disagree with it fundamentally.
Precisely, yes.
Yeah. Anyway,
All right.
back at the ranch.
This type of story
Don't live in Russia.
is like that old school kind of thing. At least that's one interpretation of it. Part of the reason why I'm hedging my bet on this particular thing is that I really am not 100% sure what the ultimate message of this episode was supposed to be. Was it don't rely on stolen brains to run your society? Which, by the way, this plot very, very close to Lift Us Up Where Suffering Cannot Reach from Strange New Worlds. Remember the episode with the child?
Oh yeah.
I mean,
right.
having a brain operate the infrastructure,
So,
right? That's yeah.
Yeah.
This is another version of that. This is a less interesting version of that, I'd argue,
Yeah.
because they didn't examine it very
More
deeply.
nonsensical version.
They didn't examine the culture what the culture looked like at its peak and how it was structured. They didn't examine why it split into this male upstairs, women downstairs
Yeah.
type situation. They didn't explain exactly how
Spock
they procreate or what's going on.
It was funny that Spock started pontificating it on the end, and that was like a chance for even the joke was lazy.
No,
like
it was like some weird, super manic, like pure
Yeah, right.
manic
Right.
exposition.
Right.
It was like, hey, we wasted all this time with
Right.
repetitive scenes all throughout the episode, saying the exact same thing over and over again, sometimes in multiple different locations, saying the same thing.
Yeah.
And now we get to the end, and Spock is just like, oh, by the way, blah 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 blah.
Yeah. And then the joke was really lazy. Like McCoy, what was he just? He was just like, "That's it. I knew I made a mistake." And I was like, "What's that?" By putting his brain back into his head.
Wah, wah.
Wah, wah, wah.
Brain is gone.
Oh no! There were some weird
It's
musical.
been removed surgically.
There were some weird sort of musical hits going on in this episode. One thing though, I think this episode had that Star Trek always TOS has some of the best of is brawls. TOS
Yes.
has the best brawls.
Yes.
This is a good brawl. Yeah,
Yeah, they don't have brawls in any of the other in the other Star Treks.
Not so much. Yeah.
Yeah.
When they got in
very
the,
little, very
And they
little.
played the brawl music,
When
which
they were-
is some kind of flute trilling around.
Yes.
And
It's like jester music. Especially
Yeah,
when
right.
you know they're going to win when they start playing like the court jester fight music.
yeah, right.
Yeah,
Yeah, right.
It's like they're
Right.
they're doing judo flips.
I love this idea that brawls are so like carefree and fun and
Yeah.
silly. It's like, no, man, like you get busted over the head with shit and break your face and stuff. But I do think it is fun to have this sort of romantic, silly view of this brawl. Right? I'm reminded of, was it the Tribble episode where
Yeah.
they
Which
did
Tribble
with-
episode? There are many Tribble
The
episodes.
original.
the original
Oh,
one?
the Trouble with
the funny
Tribble.
Tribble with
Klingons,
Tribble.
yeah.
Didn't they have one of those brawls with the Klingons?
At station
Yeah.
K7.
Or in that movie Mean Streets when they have that brawl like in the pool hall, it's like that same kind of like playful kind of attitude.
Mean Streets? Is that Scorsese movie?
Yeah,
I never saw that movie.
Okay, well I'm sorry I brought it up.
If you're going to watch a Scorsese
Completely
movie,
off topic.
you should watch
No.
After Hours. That's a great underseen
Oh wait, which one is that?
Scorsese movie.
What about
After Hours?
bringing out the dead?
That's a good one too.
Oh, that's good. I
That's
like that
with
one.
Nicolas Cage, right?
Yeah.
That's a good.
I saw
that's a
that in the
good
theater.
one. Yeah, I did too.
Yeah, it was good.
After Hours came out when I was a child, so I did not see it in the theater. But go.
Which one
see-
is After Hours?
After Hours is where the guy from An American Werewolf in London he's just trying to get home from work in Manhattan, and like all these situations waylay him. All these peculiar, bizarre New York situations waylay him.
I
on
don't
his
think
way
I've
home.
seen that one.
You probably haven't. A lot of people
Oddly
haven't,
enough.
and it's a fantastic, unusual Martin Scorsese film.
Because we know, we have a common friend that I thought he had seen all the Scorsese movies.
I presume he has that-
And I thought
that
I had
friend you
seen them.
speak of.
I thought I had seen them with him, but I guess we had not seen
Missed
that
out,
one.
missed out on this one. All right, so that's been
Anyway.
our episode of It's Got Scorsese.
Got some other shit on it.
We'll get back to It's Got Star Trek right now.
Okay, so another thing
Dan's
that
all ready to go.
another thing that this had that TOS has really is almost as probably at least as good as the brawls. Oh, by the way, in the brawl there was Kirk did an awesome jump kick
Are
thing.
you talking about the brawl when they were captured in the underground place?
Yeah, and Kirk did a cool front jump kick, and then he did this really questionable side kick weirdness, but then he did the classic double axe handle,
Yeah,
two-handed
yeah.
punch.
Gotta have the two-handed punch.
Gotta have the two-handed punch. But
Nothing says being captain like 10 broken fingers.
yeah, right.
That's how you get up there.
But they also have great like group falls.
Yes.
Like
Like when three of them fall at once.
when
Yeah.
she pushed the button on her magic armband,
Right.
and
Oh, yeah.
everybody just goes like, woo!
right. So at first, and I looked at
Even Nurse Chapel.
Nurse Chapel,
It's like, oh no, not Nurse Chapel.
Major Barrett went to the ground.
I know.
Like, bam, down onto the ground.
Bam.
I was impressed.
Oh, I got to rewatch.
No
that
stunt
part.
person at all.
So I looked at that device, and so there was two things that happened at the start. She just made everyone faint, right? Everyone just fainted. It didn't seem like there was any pain involved. But then, like when they were captured, she like made them feel super pain where all their shit was on
because
fire.
at that point she had a pain belt.
Okay,
remember?
do you think that was
because they captured them?
they hooked them up with
They
those
put
pain
the pain
belts.
belt on them, and then the pain belt made them feel pain.
It was like little buzzers.
They're little green circle belts.
Okay, so that was that's interesting. I didn't think about
insidious green
I
belts.
didn't think about
Where they had to, the acting was really good because they had to act like they were impossible to get off when it was clear that they were about to just fucking fall
Yeah,
off.
they were just
they were
plastic.
they were
Spock.
like shittily made.
But-
They didn't put it on
But-
Spock Zombie.
Yes.
but Shatner fell the best. He's like walking around and he throws his fists into the air. He's like, oh, and then he falls to the ground. It's so overly dramatic and it's fucking amazing.
He's a professional.
But their wrist thing, their bracelet they're wearing, it's got the way it's set up. It has a small green Tic Tac at the top, a small black Tic Tac below it, a big yellow
Some kind of
round
gumdrop.
a big yellow round button, an identical red round button below it. It's
Like
got
the gumdrop.
It's the wristband is some kind of copper color, and in the middle there's this big wristband colored button, and then there was like some other silver smaller button, and then like. And so
It
they,
was an array.
and then-
Jesse, this is a pretty good description he's on.
and so
Yeah.
and
He's
in
giving
order,
a real detailed description. I wonder if it's going to lead up to anything.
well, it's interesting you say about the pain belts because I was noticing that in order to make people faint, they press the green button.
because the pain belts had the green circle
Well,
on
so,
it.
but when they were fainting, at like without the pain, she pressed the green button.
She just jumped on the bridge
But-
and shocked everybody.
But she didn't shock him. She just made him faint. There was no pain. But then later on, she pressed. Here's where I was confused.
Okay,
she
this
pressed,
is where you were confused.
She pressed the same green button. The same green button that made them faint painlessly also made them writhe in pain. And Patrick, you pointed out that you think the difference could be is that it was the pain
the belts.
belts, and I didn't think about that.
I think it's because they got the
I don't know if
belts.
they meant if
you gotta-
that was intentional at all. I don't
Because
think
there
they,
was another button that
on-
released the belt.
Yes.
Well, to release it, to make
like
them
double tap it?
They double tap the green to make them come back to life again.
Or do you stick a paper clip in the little tiny hole on the side?
No, they didn't have a reset button.
But you have to remember, this is a huge. This society was, at least at one point, their technology is so advanced that they're using ion propulsion.
Right, ion propulsion.
They were so on about that ion.
So you know what's
propulsion.
hilarious about that? We have ion propulsion. Do you know how ion propulsion works? It's great. It's super high tech. It's super advanced stuff. You shoot out ions, shooting out the back, like, you know. It takes forever to accelerate. It uses very little fuel, super hyper efficient, but it's not going to get you anywhere fast. It's where you want, if you're okay with something accelerating for literally a couple of years.
If you want to go to 7
it can go really fucking fast.
Yeah, because
but
you're in
it's-
space and there's no friction. It
right,
doesn't
and
take that much.
but it's going to take a while to get up there.
Right. So what? And
So I don't. It's just funny to hear them talking about ion propulsion as if it's some like better than warp drive thing.
yeah, because when they were on the planet, they were talking about like they first of all they didn't seem that alarmed that the entire planet.
Scotty was all like, ions.
Yeah, they didn't seem that alarmed that the planet was moving out of like orbit on its own, like
Yeah.
moving of its own volition, like it was there's enough power to move this out of orbit, and they were saying it takes nuclear power source hundreds of miles across, or just ion power. Like, and we're assuming this planet's like the size of and density of approximately Earth. So apparently, I wonder if that math works out that it takes a nuclear source hundreds of miles across to move the planet Earth. We know the ion part's wrong, but I'm wondering how much nuclear power it takes to move the planet Earth.
Ions.
But as to what you were saying about the pain belts,
pain belt.
Please.
This episode was lazy enough that I don't believe that they intentionally meant that the pain belts made them feel pain and the non-pain belts made them not feel pain. Okay.
Delights.
Why did the green button have two functions? I think they just totally didn't think about it and they were just like, yeah, just press one of the buttons.
Hey, just push the green
Do
button.
you
think
think
it-
the belts also made them feel delight? They just didn't get the chance
Kids
to feel
like
the
green
delight.
things.
I-
They like money and weed.
That's how they give the pain and the delight.
Green.
So why were they able to make them faint without the pain? I don't know, man. It's
I
so
do
conf-
think this
You think
probably
they
fall-
thought it through?
No,
Maybe the fainting was the part of the delight.
I do think this probably falls into one of those categories of things we needn't stress too much about.
Right.
No, but it's just more questions. It's just they
you're
didn't
right.
they didn't develop anything. They didn't think it through. They just threw a bunch of shit at us that was nonsense.
Yeah, at times it felt like it was written by like different writers, but it was written.
It was written by one dude, like under an alias.
Well, no, what it sounded like, it felt like it was being written by different writers, but what it was is it was written by one writer at a time. Then in the middle of a scene, the writer was like, "Oh, I got to take a piss," and then another guy sat down, having been in the separate room, not knowing what's going on, and just started writing like
typing on a typewriter.
Just started like typing after him. There was the whole part where they were saying Kirk was like, if his brain is missing, then Spock is dying. That's what Kirk says. And McCoy's like, no, he's not dying. No, he's not dying. And then Kirk's like, oh, well, how long can you keep him functioning? He's like, oh, I can't tell you that. I mean, he's not dying, but I can't tell you how long I can keep his body functioning. It's like, well,
somehow I don't know about Vulcans, even though Vulcans have been part of our culture for like 100 years or so.
So like if he's not dying, but at the same time you have 24 hours before you can give him his brain back. If he's not dying, then what is he?
By the way, a totally seemingly arbitrary number, right? Because again, the way that was written, if they wanted to have a limit, they could have made a limit and justified it from the get-go. But instead, Kirk is like, what's the deal? And McCoy is all like, oh, I don't know. If it was a human, it could be indefinitely. But since it's a Vulcan, I don't know. Right?
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, you don't know. You just said you don't know. But under normal circumstances with a human, it would be indefinitely. But with Vulcans, you're just not sure. And then all of a sudden, it's like, no, now it's 24 hours.
Right. Well, and what you were saying about just then.
To what? To where?
How McCoy was.
To how?
To why?
So originally Spock's not dying, and then like you said, McCoy's like, well, we don't know about Vulcans, so let's just say 24 hours. And so you're like, okay, well, I guess Spock is dying. I guess Spock.
Chicken.
I guess Spock is dying, and it's 24 hours, but only because I don't know about Vulcans. But then later in the episode, Spock's like, Dr. McCoy must have told you that 24 hours is the maximum my body can take. And McCoy's like, yeah, I don't. And it's like, wait, so does McCoy does he not going to live for 24 hours because McCoy doesn't know enough about Vulcans? Or is this just something that exists about Vulcans?
Exactly.
They changed the story
They
changed the story 3 times, from not dying to dying because he didn't know about Vulcans to dying because that's how Vulcans just are.
Yeah.
And 24 and the whole episode,
very lazy,
completely lazy.
Yes.
Like, I can get that it doesn't really matter how much time it takes, but 24 hours, they never stop to consider how weirdly coincidental that number is. It's like, oh,
was it just because they
24
didn't know?
It's
like,
Earth hours.
well, so wait, like a Vulcan can survive without their brain. They already know this, but a Vulcan can survive without their brain for exactly how many hours there are in a day on the planet Earth.
On the planet Earth.
Like, what the fuck?
Okay.
Like, they didn't try at all. Why didn't they just say 30 hours? Like, I mean, if you're gonna like not put any effort into this,
why is it 24 hours?
Just don't try to like put some fake relation and get people to understand. It's like, oh, I know what 24 hours means. That's a day, you know?
Like, they didn't know if they were going to get canceled or not, so like they just lazed some episode. Like,
I think that's what they did. I think I think what happened is they got the premise and they were like, oh, this is a pile of shit. Let's just add to this pile. Fuck this episode.
How
shitty can we make this? Yeah, like I'll start writing. You stay in the other room. When I piss, you come in and start writing.
You come in and just go.
And then we'll just keep switching places and fuck this episode.
It'll be like a big game of telephone.
Another contributing factor is the reduced budget. In the sense that you would expect they're really going to be as tight as possible with their filming schedule. And I'd imagine, just from my reading behind the scenes stuff, it seems to be that in a lot of cases, a lot of the final bits and pieces of an episode kind of come up on set, or they're ideas that are incorporated in last minute or late, because the TV schedule back in those days in particular was extremely hectic, 15, 16 hours a day for long periods of time. With limited breaks and all that. So they're always catching up. And so that can be great. That can be great for creativity if you're not burnt out and all that. In this case, though, I
have time to eat a sandwich.
I think it was as simple as they just didn't have as much time and even crew maybe to film these things, because the lighting was weird. And I swear there are scenes where it seems like somebody's flubbed their line, but they kept it in. You can see that there's a few instances of that in the movie Goonies, which I love the movie Goonies, but there's parts of Goonies where it's just like they clearly didn't say their line properly, and the director was just like, nah, we'll just move on. Got it, And I think that's what happened here to a certain extent, because there's just a few scenes like that. And then there are some of these herky-jerky edits that don't tell me that they had a bad editor. It tells me they didn't have the footage they needed to give the editor the space they needed to work and craft the story. So while I do think no matter what, the script is kind of lumpy and bad to begin with going into it, I think that's all exacerbated by the fact that there's just limited opportunities to fix it on the day while filming.
There's just everybody
Saving
just
money on
says
film,
silly
sets,
shit.
everything like that, you know?
Everybody's just saying silly shit like all the time. It's
Yeah.
like,
Oh, that was there.
he's operating at warp speed.
Yeah. And there was one part where I think it was like they were like talking to Luma.
I am Luma.
And Kirk's like, I can't remember what part. It was either Luma or Karen. Kirk's basically like, we don't want to hurt you. What's this place? And she's like, this place is here. And he's like, who are you? What are you doing? Or something like that. And then the music out of nowhere just goes,
I know.
like, who are you?
I want to go to the organizers, the managers,
Right.
the managers.
Right.
Take me to
Right.
your leader.
It's like, wait, like it's just a bunch of women. Well, who built all this? Who are the doctors?
Yeah.
And who's in charge?
Yeah, you're
It's
right.
like, what the fuck?
You're right. The implicit assumption was is that you had to have men.
If it's just
build
you
all
women,
this
like
stuff.
who built all this?
Yeah, I know, right.
Oh, and it's even better or worse. I mean, technically, when Kirk is talking about there's certain aspects of, that they like why people
Right.
would like it down here. Clearly making an ass joke.
Yeah, right.
He's saying there's like hot gals
Yeah.
with sweet
There's
tushes.
no belly button,
Tuchus.
but-
Yeah, tuchus. That girl's got a sweet tuchus.
You can't see her belly button, but you can
Yes,
see her
exactly,
ass.
right? Yeah, your belly button not allowed on network TV, but the rest of the nearly nude body,
Thighs and ass.
in a woman who's described as having a childlike brain.
Yeah,
Oh, no.
right.
And Kirk and the guys are all like, oh,
Yeah, McCoy
we'll
goes,
hang out here.
McCoy says, I'm sure you noticed the delight aspect of this place. And Kirk's like, yes, I certainly did notice those delightful aspects. But,
Aspects.
Well,
But
I
those-
am Captain Kirk.
but that too was strictly under command of the women. I mean, that was kind of an assumption at the
Well,
end. But I
of
mean,
course, and
it's
then
a
they're-
safe assumption.
They're
I
talking
guess.
about the whole maintaining control over a man.
Yeah.
They would need this whole.
Yeah.
It's all
Right.
this very weird. And again, it's like, what are you trying to say? What
Yeah,
message
right.
was here?
Right.
Completely unexplained.
So there was a lot of kind of fun stuff going on. These vamping a little, vamp.
Are you just
Vamp.
vamping until I mentioned the Pizza Hut-esque light fixture that they had in their that
Oh,
one
yeah,
room?
that's right.
It wasn't exactly like because the Pizza
Oh,
Hut
it
is
was
the more,
reminiscent.
but it was reminiscent of that.
Which way? Oh, was that in their main?
In their main.
That little
yeah.
chandelier bit off
That-
to
the
the
chin-
side.
The whole, again, the all the production design. It's not bad, but it's clearly like a little bit less than what they've been doing before. In some ways, at least.
It was a little just sort of toned down, simpler.
little spare.
Yeah,
I was trying to
spare.
figure out, like in that matte painting when they were transporting onto this place, that glacial planet, right?
Glacial?
Now I was trying to figure out how that worked because I would assume, like, how did they incorporate that matte painting? Was it like they had a backdrop behind him, or did they just like pull their bodies out of the scene and then put a big giant picture behind him? You know what I'm saying? Like how?
No, it's just behind everything.
So that's what I'm saying. You think it's a big backdrop
I've
behind?
seen pictures of sets. It's just a big back.
Yeah, no,
it's,
and so-
it's like
a
curtains. It's,
sound
basically
stage.
like curtains.
No,
You
exactly.
can pull down. It's like a map pull
right,
down.
yes,
thing.
exactly. And so that's what I was assuming, but I couldn't for the life of me find the point of
The vanishing point. The horizon.
not the well. I mean, I guess where the floor ended and the curtain began. I couldn't find the point where like
You're not supposed to.
I know
Where
you're
the
not
rubber
supposed
meets
to.
the
It curves. It curves. At
I
the
know you're not
bottom.
supposed to, but I'm saying I think people with a better eye than me would be able to be like, oh yeah, you see right there, you
Oh,
can tell
sure,
where.
yeah.
And so I wasn't. This wasn't a criticism. This was on anyone but myself because I need to be hard on myself in
I
order
know
to be a better
this is,
person.
Okay, for new listeners, this is something that we've noticed recently that Dan has. This is at least the second or third time you've brought this up, Dan, where you comment on how you can't tell where a matte painting has been
Yeah.
used or starts or stops, and then you assert that the reason you can't tell is because of some sort of personal or biological defect on your part, as opposed to
Which is very unfair.
the high degree of skill and training and expertise of the matte painters.
Well,
I'm just saying that it's a subtle difference, but there's a bias. There's an interesting bias, a self-conscious
but
bias.
I'm saying other people have more skill as to be able to recognize it themselves, and I lack that skill. So since I lack that skill, relatively speaking, that could be thought of as a deficiency. Now, I know I have other ways that I can make up for that. That's not one of my skills.
Please list 3.
You have other
Please
skills.
list three things that can overcome your matte painting identification deficiency.
I'm super, I'm swell, and I'm pretty darn neat. Okay, those.
I honestly, I wish I could disagree, but I cannot.
Yeah, you can't. So
any of those.
I
three
want you
things.
to understand, though, that I'm able to criticize myself, but I don't think less of myself as a person because I know that
Okay,
that is
good.
not. I have other skills and abilities, but I'm able to rationally recognize deficiencies in myself in the ways that I'm a terrible, shitty person without feeling bad about myself.
I think that's great. I think that's excellent. I just continue to find it amusing. That you're like, I'm so fucking stupid. I got fooled by another matte painting.
Fooled by the matte painting
I'm
again.
a fucking piece of shit.
Again, fooled by matte painting.
Goddamn Hollywood.
Hollywood, there's fucking tricks and lies.
All right, how about this? Let's take a quick break, and then we can come back and we can wrap up our conversation about this
Time to wrap
crazy
it
old
fucking-
episode called Spock's Brain. Okay, we'll be right back. Okay, we're back. We've calmed down just a little bit.
Another bit of an area where I think there were 2 writers and they didn't communicate when they
Just 2.
yeah.
I like this little world you're positing. This world of these 2 writers.
Well, and Jesse's right. There were probably more, but in this situation, there's 2 specifically.
Thing 1 and Thing 2.
Because when they get on the planet, Kirk's like suit temperatures to 72, and I'm guessing that they have their temperatures like in the animated series. They're like an aura around
They have
them.
their aura that you can't see.
Right.
Yeah.
And he's like, life form readings, Mr. Spock. And he's like, uh-oh, Mr. Scott. But the point I'm getting at is when he says suit temperatures to 72. So we've established that there's environmental controls in their suit. And, Chekhov is like, it's 40 degrees. It's livable. And Kirk's like, oh, you live in weird places or something.
He's Russian.
Yeah, he
That
was
like
ma-
a Russia joke.
Yeah, I know. I know. I was thinking about that. I was wondering if that was like specifically supposed to be a Russian joke or something.
It's like, I wash my,
It was a Russian
wash my
joke.
balls
But-
in ice water.
But did you notice later with Chekhov and the Redcoat crew who were kind of lazing around in that episode pretty much.
Another example of a totally not only redundant but an unnecessary scene where Chekhov was like, hey, it's going to take a little while. I'm going to heat up this rock, and you're going to watch me heat up this rock, and then we're going to hang out by the rock for a little bit, and
just do
then we'll go to the next scene.
It would only been better if they turned around and like rubbed their butts like in a cartoon against the heat. But so right, yeah, I guess it was supposed to be like, oh, that's neat. They can heat that up with a phaser. I don't know what the point was.
that was we need to fill fucking time because it's a over 50-minute episode.
But and so here's the thing, why did they need to do that when they can set their environmental suits to 72? Why did they need to fucking heat themselves against a rock?
Story. There's no story.
Because these writers are crazy.
That's what I'm saying. But this is one of those questions where I'm beginning with my assertion and ending with the question that leads back to my assertion, which is there were several writers that just didn't talk to each other.
It's a very, very philosophical of you. We're going to call that the allegory of Dan.
I don't know how I feel about what you just said.
All right. I do want to add to what I want to add evidence to the pile that you've been building up. Remember
building a shit pile.
Remember when McCoy is trying to argue
Let's
that
sift through your shit.
he should be allowed to put on the little brain teacher hat thing. And McCoy says that he wants to bring new techniques to the world.
Right.
Yeah.
Which fucking world is he talking about?
Yeah.
Earth? What are you talking about? The world?
Yeah,
world.
right.
He lives
That's a
in
good
the
point.
fucking galaxy.
You're right. Yeah.
What a fucking dickhead.
He
Come
should
on.
have he should have said the Federation.
Was he only
Yeah.
going to take the secrets back to his Georgia
The
plantation?
Alpha Quadrant. Right.
That's a
Yeah.
good
We know from
I'm
the
going to
animated
take it back to Georgia.
The animated series, he has like the fantasy of living on a fucking proper 1800s plantation.
Okay,
You
Daffy.
think he's got peaches?
Well, I don't know. Peaches also, I don't know. I don't know what they thought that McCoy was growing. I hesitate to
peanuts.
guess what McCoy thought he would be growing in his fantasy plantation scenario.
Yeah, that was a good point. I didn't notice that. It was very
world.
Earth-centric.
The shrimp
and,
is really good in Georgia. The shrimp.
And for some reason, they decided that McCoy, for whatever reason, couldn't put the hat on. Put the hat on more than once. They
The
decided
sweet
that.
tea and the barbecue is also good in.
Oh yeah, it is.
I like the Carolina style barbecue.
That's also. There's lots of good barbecue.
See,
all good.
since we come from a state that's not known for barbecue, we have the advantage of getting to like all the barbecue
Yeah.
and not having to get bogged down in these terrible arguments.
Well, I think like Virginia barbecue is like a weird version of Carolina barbecue.
Yeah, but we don't care that much.
But it doesn't really matter.
Nobody cares.
It
Nobody
doesn't
calls it
matter.
Virginia
Nobody,
barbecue.
Nobody
But
gives
we
a
always have to
shit,
deal with
yeah.
people from other parts of the country coming here and being like, your barbecue
Right.
sucks.
Yeah, but
it's like, okay,
but-
yeah, I know.
Well,
whatever.
yeah, well, Northern Virginia.
The cool
barbecue.
part
But I mean,
is,
it's like,
the cool-
yeah, of
but
course,
the cool
who
part
cares?
is we don't care. We,
Yeah,
act-
no, of
we
course
actually don't
not.
care. That's the
It
most,
doesn't.
the most for just for folks, because most of our audience lives
have,
outside of the DC area.
We have pho restaurants and ramen.
There's advantages and disadvantages to living inside the Beltway, but one of the advantages is that you cultivate a sincere capability of just not giving a shit about so much stuff.
Right. There's
This is
actually
like, I'm not impressed with your little whatever
and
this
I know
is.
and I know this sounds like rooting for the home team and everything, but like there's some
We
good
got mumbo sauce.
there's some good fucking food.
Got some half smokes.
There's some good food from all over the world
Yeah,
in this
yeah.
fucking
There's
place.
some-
It's highly underrated.
Right.
Yeah.
No, we have food from all over here,
Yeah.
so we don't have like
Still, but it's great.
a lot of
and
indigenous
it's
Americans.
not like just we have a bunch of bland food from all over. Like we don't do anything particularly
good
well. We have
stuff.
a we have
it's all the snazzy
we have a
shit.
diverse population
we
that
have
like makes
we
their
have
own
decent
food.
versions, not the best in most cases, but we have decent versions of food from all over the place. But that doesn't take away the awesomeness of getting to travel to places, to the origin of the food, and get the real deal. You definitely
Okay,
that's true.
so like in Oklahoma, I remember they had a lot of Italian restaurants.
Oklahoma,
And-
where the wind goes sweeping down the
Jesus
plains.
Okay, can we stop that? Can we just put a halt on that one right
That's
now?
a musical.
I know what it is.
You know, it's called Oklahoma.
I know,
He
but
knows what
it's
you're
really
doing.
fucking tedious.
Oklahoma.
It's really tedious. What's going on right now? So some place. So notice some places will say like, okay, we have Italian restaurants, and it's like,
which is bullshit.
and it's like, yeah, it's bullshit. You're just calling it
It's
Italian.
a bullshit. You don't
You-
have an
you-
Italian restaurant.
Okay, can you stop for a second?
Sorry, okay. So you were getting so excited. You were making me excited.
So and so it's just an excuse to have like pasta and with gravy and all that stuff, you know.
Pasta ravioli.
So that's the point. But the thing about DC food is the food that's made from we have food from all over because we have people from all over. So it is like
Absolutely.
it's authentic on a lot of levels. Now, I'm not saying it's the best in the world. I'm just saying like it is authentic.
we
and a lot, there's a lot of
get a good
authentic stuff.
variety.
Yeah.
And I think, this divergence from the main topic of conversation
Yeah.
was okay. We do have to note that we are being funded by the DC Tourism Bureau. Come to DC. It's
really,
all right.
It's really pretty here.
it's fine. It's just fine. You'll enjoy yourself.
We get free mumbo sauce and creams.
There's mumbo sauce.
Okay, so
Star Trek.
so McCoy couldn't put the hat on more than once for some fucking
Yes,
reason.
I had that in my notes too. I was like,
Yeah,
why can't you just
why
put it back on and like maybe write them down instead of having to just do the surgery?
I
this
had
time?
in my notes magic helmet. Oh, holy fuck!
Or spear and magic helmet, spear and magic helmet, magic helmet, and I'll give you a sample. What's that from?
I don't know.
That's from the Bugs Bunny.
Yeah.
Is it from the Music Man?
From the Bugs Bunny.
What was the name of that?
76 trombones.
No, it's
and
not from
something.
that,
Hooray.
Patrick.
It's
Jesus
like,
fucking Christ.
it's like when they're doing that Wagner.
Yeah,
joke.
it was Bugs Bunny and Elmer Fudd. What's that? I'm gonna type in Wagner. We got to get back on topic.
We've been on topic.
This is topic, baby.
What's opera doc? That's what is it? What's opera doc?
What's
What's opera?
opera doc?
Right.
So they were talking about like this fucking like hat thing.
Yes, I know.
So Spock was talking.
It's like the thing like in Back to the Future that
Yes,
Doc
Doc
Brown's
Brown
yeah,
has a
right.
similar thing.
And you notice Kirk lifted up and it was attached to this pole thing, and then like he let go and it started all shaking around, and Scotty like grabs it to like steady it, and I'm thinking like I think he just did that because the prop was about to break.
I 100% agree.
But Spock goes.
It also perms your hair.
Yeah, right. It's totally like that's how they look so good all the time. How everyone looks so good there. It is and how the cavemen get those fucking those haircuts.
That's where they go down there. They get their delight.
So Spock was describing this thing. He goes, "It is a device with feeding circuits. They lead into the mind of the priestess leader.
Yeah.
Its use is strictly predetermined by the builders." What the fuck is he talking about?
Nobody knows.
Is it Kara?
The implication is that there's some signal that
Who is
when
this
the signal,
priestess leader?
That's
Kara.
the one main one.
But
the
Kara,
purple girl.
Kara, how is she a priestess leader? Most of the time, she's just like I'm one of these.
Because
but like
she's wearing blue.
Purple.
Purple. Is it purple?
Purple. It's not called Mr. Purple.
All right.
I call it purple. I'll call it purple.
Why am I Mr. Pink?
Mr. Purple's on a different job, isn't it?
Whatever it is, purple or blue. That's point number one. That's why she's the leader. Second point is the clearest assumption, my understanding, my reading, was that the leader person hangs out in that room, and there's going to be some sort of signal or something that tells them to put on the helmet. And then when they put on the helmet gives them commands. Like the command might be, go trap some more dudes.
So
the command might be, you need a new brain, go steal it from this guy on a spaceship.
There's a totally separate entity that we never get to meet.
The previous brain, I guess.
Yeah, it was the previous brain.
The previous brain lives on? What? Why is
No,
the previous
brain does not live on.
It didn't live on.
It was
but-
replaced by Spock.
But it had to tell that lady to go get the Spock
Yes.
brain.
Who is the priestess leader?
Kara.
She's the purple girl.
Okay, so the purple girl.
Kara, yeah.
For
that's
most
it.
of the
I
time,
think her name is Kara,
for
right?
most
Yeah,
of, for
it's
the
Kara.
most of the time, they're as the crew describes them, simple-minded. That's what McCoy
Yes.
says. They're simple-minded.
Presumably.
They're simple-minded
I'm saying
ladies.
yes, like I know what this is meaningless,
I
ludicrous script.
know,
but yes,
I know.
from the
So-
information provided, I
so-
would say yes.
So it seems like
should
this
probably
hat.
not say it too
seems
much.
like this hat is making Kara a different person entirely, not just smarter.
Yeah.
She's becoming, her whole personality changes. She
changed.
becomes the priestess leader, right? But in every other one, when she's just, I'm just Kara. I don't know what for,
Brain.
So my question is does this hat turn you into a different person, or does it just make you smarter? Because with McCoy, it just made him smarter.
I think it
with
just makes you smarter, but I
with Kara,
think-
it brought her to a different existence.
No, the thing
It
is,
made her the priestess lady.
you can assert that, and
It's
I
all,
think you can.
it's very troubling, all of it.
I think you can. I think you can make a strong argument in that direction, Dan. But I don't think it's obvious. I think you could argue that she is so quote unquote simple-minded that when they juice up her intelligence, that it's not like she's being controlled by the brain creature fully. She's just, her intelligence is upgraded temporarily or something so she can receive the information. I don't know. I'm just saying that's a possibility as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's just confusing because
It's difficult to defend such a goofy.
it's because she suddenly becomes like this entirely different, like sinister being. But yeah, I mean, I guess it doesn't.
then
It's not worth
it
worrying
doesn't
about.
last.
Yeah, it doesn't last.
And she doesn't remember anything that she
And
knew
again,
before.
is that by design? Did they design a society where they're like, okay, we're gonna have the brain run it, and we're gonna make people stupid? Or are they saying that if you offload your work of most of the work to a big brain, then you'll become stupid? It's just
What is that brain doing though?
It's running all
Is it telling them how to
It's
be
running
and
all
shit?
these places we didn't get to see because they didn't have the budget to show us the coal plants and the energy production plants and the air filtration systems. They were referring
The
to.
air is crisp.
I did like that idea of Spock's brain interpreting like breathing and
Right.
and pooping and stuff like that as like running
That was
industrial
cool.
machinery.
Is he telling those girls how to poop?
No, I think
No.
but he's like in his mind when he thinks of poop, he's actually running like the waste extraction
right.
center.
When they're asking, like, they were asking, the Kirk is all like, we might be able to locate you if you give us some idea of what they were using you for. Is it medical? And Spock's like, I'm not certain. I seem to have a body which stretches into infinity.
Yeah, dude, I'm tripping on acid, man.
Sometimes
Took some good shrooms there.
Sometimes I feel like my body is stretching into infinity.
For real, dude.
Wah, wah. I ate too much chocolate.
Or jelly beans or what have you.
I've been into the sour Mike and Ike's lately.
Oh yeah. it's good stuff.
I've never been able.
I know, because you don't like the jelly bean style stuff.
I
You don't
don't-
like Sour
no.
Patch, Mike and Ike's.
No,
Jelly
Sour
Bean.
Patch is
He likes
fine.
he likes
J-
gummy
sour
bears.
Jelly bean, no.
Sour Patch are essentially fancy ass jelly beans.
No, Sour
No,
Patch are more
it's
gummies.
different,
But
dude.
they
more on
have
the gummy
I think
side.
the filling is like a jelly bean style filling.
Do they have I don't know them having a filling.
well, when I say filling, I mean the chewy innards.
It's a similar. It's a
I
similar
agree.
critter.
It's in that direction
Different
on
critter,
the
right.
jelly bean spectrum.
It doesn't have the same crust. But Mike and Ike is essentially a fancy jelly bean. A Sour Patch
I don't like Mike
is like
and
a
Ike's.
crazy jelly bean.
I don't like regular old jelly
What
beans.
about Good and Plenty? You like Good
Fuck,
and Plenty?
are you fucking
Oh,
high?
you guys don't like licorice.
Jesse's just trying to fuck with you. I'm
Yeah, I
sure.
think it's-
Yeah,
I tried a red vine once. It tasted like plastic to
Red
me.
fine, yeah.
That's
don't-
because
don't
people
eat
on the
that.
West Coast are crazy.
Don't eat
Yeah.
that stuff.
Silly billies. We love ya. We love ya.
We love ya.
We love to visit ya and then come home.
But we don't like to hang around you too much.
because you guys are silly with your red vines and your Ralphs.
On your Ralphs. Oh yeah, Ralph.
Ralph means to vomit. Why would I want to go to a store that's like, hey, let's go pick up some stuff? Ralph.
Well, they do sell hard licker
Not
like
in here, buddy.
way into the night there.
Yeah. All right. All right. That's enough. We're going around saying like DC's great, the rest of the world fucking sucks.
Yeah, I know, right? What's going on with us today?
I don't know.
We're being
Maybe
real
we
broy.
just have some local
By the way,
pride.
come to DC.
Come to DC and hang out with the three bros.
Washington.
I like
Three
how,
white bros.
I like how after McCoy's done putting his brain together, they're like, "Did you do it right?" He's like, "How do I know? I could have made 1,000 mistakes. Sealing nerve endings, joining ganglia. The fluid balance is correct, but I don't know." They kind of moved
So
Uh,
on.
tiresome.
They kind of moved on from that pretty quickly. Like like,
well, and I would argue that maybe he didn't do something right because Spock is speaking at 1,000 miles a minute.
Right. It's like, I know. And like, they're pointing out the fact that like, I could have fucked any number of things up here and totally fucked up the way Spock is, and they just move on from that. But yeah, like you're saying, he starts acting like you said, a manic exposition.
It's like he's having a manic episode, which you could argue makes sense in the context of your brain just getting squished back into your head. That there's probably a certain euphoria associated with that.
Oh. And Jesse, you brought up earlier 10,000 years until there's another controller. Why 10,000 years? Why does it take 10,000 years?
That's how long until they use up all the brain juice.
Yeah, but she was saying, but at one point they were like, give us Spock back, and she's like, we can't because we don't. A brain only comes along once every 10,000 years.
Which is that okay?
That doesn't make any fucking sense.
It doesn't make any sense, and I guess the presumption is that they need a sufficiently intelligent brain, so they're going. That's why they targeted Spock in the end. They
can't use those unga bunga
because Kara showed up on the ship and she wandered around, kind of smiling goofily, and looked at a few different people, and then zeroed on.
She was like
Spock, and she felt his wig. It was all like, "Ooh, this guy is smart."
So
she handled his dome.
The line actually is, Kara goes, "You will give life to my people for 10,000 years to come." Kirk is like, "You'll find another controller," and Kara's like, "The old one is finished. There is no other than this, and will not be another for 10,000 years." Why can't they just find? Is Spock like the chosen one? Is he one of the chosen people? Like, you can't find another brain for 10,000 years? Why can't they find another Vulcan or something? You know,
it's because they didn't try very hard.
No, they didn't.
I agree. They did not try.
But it's true. They also lived for 10,000 years. So I don't know.
Well, the brain does. These people don't necessarily.
Well, no, they don't. But the brain.
I
does.
can't see these
Yes.
people living very long.
No.
Although I do think it's kind of funny that when it really comes down to it, the plot is basically Kirk shows up and Kirk is like, I'm going to undermine 10,000 years worth of your cultural and technological evolution.
Yes.
And then he's like, oh, and just don't worry about it. It's going to be fine. You just go like fuck those dudes and be fine. It'll be chill.
And he's like, we've been doing it for thousands of years. You should be too.
Yeah, you'll get there. And it's like, what? These people aren't going to die. Then everything's going to start breaking down. Like the machine, their air purifiers aren't going to work. I guess the idea is that they'd all go live on the surface and it's real fucking cold up there.
Yeah.
It seems like a Prime Directive situation.
Yeah, it does, definitely does. And it's because it's definitely like, oh, we've been doing it. You should be able to do it too. And yeah, you can't just drop a whole new way of life. He said they'd help him out for a little while, but like, I don't know, man.
Classic lower deck situation where they need the lower decks people to come in second and help sort things out.
All right. This line McCoy gave when they were talking about if his brain is missing, then Spock's dying. And McCoy goes, no, that incredible Vulcan physique hung on until the life support cycle took over. Fair enough, I guess. But then he goes, his body lives. The autonomic functions continue. But there is no mind. Now, then he goes...
There is no mind.
But then he goes, Vulcan physiology limits what I can do. Spock's body is more dependent on that tremendous brain for life support.
Yeah.
What?
No, nothing makes sense.
That doesn't make any sense.
None of it makes sense.
That makes no sense. It's like his body is more dependent... Because his brain is so powerful for some reason. I mean, I guess he can do like... I don't know. I guess he's Superman. Like Vulcans are stronger and shit, but I don't know that. I don't think about like, you know, like a giant. And I'm not saying like, look, if you're a bodybuilder, that has no relation to your intelligence. You either are. It's just part of what you're into, you know.
But you're about to say something that may imply otherwise.
No. I just don't want. I don't
you
want.
Just
people...
seem to be caveating a statement.
Well, no, because I know that that's an easy
pre-caveat.
No, that's a low hanging fruit is to be like, well, bodybuilder. No, bodybuilders are all levels of intelligence.
Absolutely.
And so I just don't want people to. I don't want people to think I'm bringing a bodybuilder saying, oh, bodybuilder. Anyway.
But you didn't make the actual point.
The point is that body, like, look, if you're a big strong man or woman,
are you implying I'm not?
Whoa, man!
If somebody is super strong and super fit and super athletic, that speaks nothing to the amount of brain power they need for their body.
Agreed.
So, anyways, I don't understand. Yeah, it's nonsense.
Right. Sorry, Jesse, didn't mean to interrupt you there.
What were you saying?
Oh
Jesse?
no, I was interrupting you guys.
Oh.
Well, it seems like the writers, whoever wrote this, wrote it as if their brain had been removed. That's my closing argument.
So, can Can we talk really quickly about McCoy's plastic, unlabeled, multicolored button Spock controller?
Oh no, Spock Frankenstein.
Okay.
How many of these people? How many of these controllers do they have lying around, or did they just make it on the fly?
I think he just sort of cobbled it together on the fly.
And so he's able to like put together a device that can make Spock move around.
He can do that, but he can't do the brain surgery shit.
No, he can't do it, but he can make a Weekend at Bernie's situation
Yeah.
where Spock's just like walking around.
Like
I hadn't,
Frankenstein.
I hadn't seen this episode. I hadn't seen this episode in a very long time, and so when I put it on, it was fairly fresh to me. And I'm watching it. I'm like, oh, there's a little bit jumpy editing there. Okay, the scenes look a little weird. It's a little confusing, but it's like, okay, whatever. This is, I'm enjoying this. This isn't like a total piece of shit. And then this zombie Spock shows up, and then at first you're like, oh my god, what's going on? And then it's like, oh. Our plan is to make Spock into a robot,
right?
And we'll beam down because that makes sense somehow. Because we want to put his brain back in as soon as possible. So we'll take him out of sick bay. We'll take his body that we've just been told needs all these computers to be on life support. Right. Because otherwise it's going to drop dead. We'll take him out of sick bay and turn him into a remote control car.
Yeah, we won't carry him on a stretcher thing or anything.
It's. I mean,
remote control car.
We're taking him with us.
But what it did remind me of is remember in the Magnificent Ferengi when they have that situation where they have to trade a hostage and the hostage accidentally gets killed, and so they have to use the same concept. They do the same thing. They make a remote control corpse. This is basically the same thing they did here. But yeah, that's sort of the point where the episode really went off the rails for me. Whereas I was like, okay, what the hell is going on here?
And right, that was one of those threads that didn't really make sense because it's like, yes, you have to bring them down to the planet, but there's no reason.
I mean, no, you don't.
You don't. Okay,
but if you go down to the planet,
but if you're going to
find his brain and bring it back,
right? You could do that, but yeah, exactly. But
or
that would make more sense.
Beam him down to where it needs to be.
That would make more sense.
So being encumbered by, not only are you encumbered by this dude lumbering around whose life you're trying to save by finding his brain, but he can't react to things, so he's already an encumbrance. Then your medical doctor has to actually be distracted by, instead of helping people and saving the day with phasers and stuff, the medical doctor has to focus on controlling the robot, and then you get into a fucking brawl in which the robot's just standing there. Robot corpse Spock is just standing there while this whole fight's going on around him. So
Spock, and now I don't know why they decided to put this in here. He did actually end up having a use in the end, but it was there was no reason for it to be this way. Like, they could have found another way to solve this problem. The problem was stealing the thing.
And you're talking about when Spock starts talking and giving advice that he should not be qualified to give because he's not a medical doctor.
Oh, well, no, I'm not talking about that part.
I thought you were talking about, like, the reason you bring him into the planet is so you can have the scene of his vocal centers being reconnected. And then we see a scene kind of like when Data is getting his brain futzed with and he can't, he starts speaking in screeches or whatever.
Yeah, all he had to do was connect Spock's vocal cords. Like, that's all they had to do from the start, is just connect his vocal cords.
Yes.
They couldn't, like, talk to him through the computer first. They had to, like, start on the surgery, then connect his vocal cords. Oh, his vocal center wasn't connected to his brain properly enough, so he had a hoarse voice.
Yes.
But they made it seem like it was so simple. It's like, just connect all you gotta do is connect the vocal
just patch
part.
the cable over here and then zap that.
Right, and what McCoy said, what I was thinking is like, how is Spock giving McCoy medical advice, and McCoy is like, I can't believe, I'm not going to live this down. This Vulcan's giving me, medical advice.
It's almost like an inside joke because Spock is not he's a very smart person, but he's not a qualified medical doctor and shouldn't be. Right? That defeats the purpose of having Dr. McCoy.
No, so the part that I was talking about is when they get Spock, who can move from this thing, which I can almost buy that. But when they're put in pain for the second time, they are somehow, Kirk, while he's writhing around in pain on the ground, he somehow can manipulate Spock into following not just going towards
that part where he remote controls,
He's remote controls and following her, and then, as if that wasn't bad enough, he's able to make Spock perform the subtle movements of grabbing some device from her hands and then grabbing her wrists. There's like 10 buttons on this thing and 3 knobs, and he's able to get Spock to simultaneously follow her around as she's changing directions, move both hands, articulate his fingers and hands.
So why
and
couldn't
then
he get Spock
grab
to
her thing.
sock somebody?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good
Exactly.
question.
Because he's the strongest dude in the room anyway.
That's a good point. I mean, he can fucking grab her shit and hold her in place without hurting her with 10 fucking buttons and 3 knobs. And so, but that was the only thing you could say that, oh, well, he was on the
10 fucking buttons and 3 knobs.
Yeah.
Sounds like a
10 fucking
upcoming
buttons.
country song on Dan's
Right.
new
It's
album.
like a Beck album.
And so you could say that's why they did it, was for that scene, but I don't buy it because they could have done any number of things there. That button, it was like there were 10 buttons. There were 3 yellow, 2 white, 2 black, 2 red, 1 blue. They were placed in seemingly random order.
You're really good at counting
They
shit
were,
up.
They were I had a whole
This guy's Mr.
we had a
Numbers
whole
over
numbers episode that you
It's
should
one of
listen
my
to.
favorite episodes.
So it's
Star
these-
Trek, by the
it's-
numbers.
It's this plastic keyboard looking keys or something. There was a spinny metal knob in the middle with 2 smaller plastic black spinny pegs.
metal knob.
Spinny pegs on either side. And it was kind of like the woman's bracelet where there was no labels at all. So what the fuck is
Do you
going
know what
on
he's
here?
talking about? Do you know what he's what the
I'm
hell
talking about the
I
fucking
know-
controller.
yeah, no, I'm drifting away a little bit, but I do know what he's talking
yeah.
about. I'm just trusting in his description. Is detailed and accurate.
I just don't know where they got this device from, and if they have a bunch of these, or if they just invented them on the fly.
replicated it.
They just have it, and then these
Computer
buttons.
create a mind control device for, by the way, a person who has no mind.
Right.
So you can't control their mind.
Right.
Is it just physical wires just jammed into the brainstem?
Well, there was the whole there was the whole the meter when they first found out that Spock's brain was missing. He was in that bed, and Spock had that weird sort of like
He had a weird hat on.
Weird brass hat thing going on.
It was like a chainmail.
Yeah, it was a chain. What's the CO? How do you pronounce that? COIF. Quaff.
A quaff.
Chain quaff.
Quaff.
A quaff. I used to think as when I was a
Isn't
kid.
quaff a hairdo?
When I was a kid, I used to think it was.
Quaff is a hairdo.
I used to
It
think it was a
is.
coif, but it's a quaff.
It's coif.
Quaff. So McCoy had one of those Atari screens, and is one of his many like Atari looking screens. And did you see all those different?
It was like Pong.
There's those vertical like meters. There was So these are the functions that meter thing read. It read their blood level, some temperature.
How could you read that, dude?
It had a brain meter.
Are you from the future?
It had a no. You pause it and you look at it. So you look at what it
What
says.
is this?
The labels.
Pause.
There was blood, a temperature, a brain meter.
A brain meter.
There was like it was temperature, brain, lungs, cell, blood, and a second blood meter. That second blood meter didn't have an arrow next to it. It just had some white line near the top, but they all had levels next to it. And when they were measuring Spock, who had no brain, there were no functions. They were all at level 0, except there was a little bit of blood meter going on. There was a little temperature meter, and Spock, who had no brain,
A little bit of Malika in my life.
Spock, who had no brain, strangely had a small reading of brain power going on in the medical reader. If you look at it,
brainstem.
because he had
Gosh darn Vulcans and their extra brainstem brains.
he must have had leftover brain in the rest of his body because
Leftover
he was
brain,
even though he
dude.
had no brain, he was still registering on the brain meter in the thing.
Well, what I think we can say with confidence is that our audience definitely does not have any leftover brain after listening to
Hey-o.
our conversation today.
Hey yo!
I don't think I do either.
At times hectic and frenetic, but hopefully infotainment.
A nuclear pile 100 miles across, or what?
Which made me
Ion power.
Made me think of like a hemorrhoid pile.
You are not Morg.
You are not Imorg.
Imorg. So the universal translator didn't get the subtleties of man and woman, but they gets everything else. It's like it couldn't figure out that Morg was man and Imorg was woman. It couldn't figure that out.
What are we going to do next week?
But
They
it figured
didn't
out
have.
all
They
sorts
didn't
of-
have Ahura with them.
what are we talking about next week?
Ahura was the one who actually made the smart comment. I forget what she was saying, but early on in the episode, she didn't have
What do
much
they
to do in
want
this
with Spock's
episode.
brain?
But yeah, that's right. She was the one who was that. That's the question. Like that'll help you
Yeah.
find it maybe if you understand what do they want. So
Yeah.
I was very impressed with that.
I mean, I guess you could say it was kind of, I don't know, back then, like, their opinions, I think back then were very binary. The way they looked at gender was very binary.
Yeah, well, absolutely.
So I find it hard to believe that they didn't think that the universal translator was like couldn't figure out like were they called Morgan Imorg? Why
But just
didn't-
for sci-fi fun.
It just
Yeah,
none of it
so-
made any
yeah.
goddamn sense. It was
All right.
so
it made
ridiculous.
any fucking sense.
But I think Jesse's right. He didn't state it outright, but he's right that we need to close things down.
what do all those other buttons
We're
do?
gonna end this
What are we talking
podcast
about
for this
next
week.
week?
What will we be talking about next week? Well,
We'll leave it up to the algorithm.
the algorithm will determine this. We will be feeding this episode the transcript of this episode into the algorithm, and it's going to tell us what we should watch next week. In all likelihood, there's a strong probability it'll be either Voyager or Enterprise, because we try to keep a bit of parity.
We haven't done an Enterprise
in the
in a
old show,
while.
so like both of those are coming due.
Probably due for an Enterprise.
Do you remember?
We've done a Voyager.
Do you remember the part where Spock was dissing on McCoy? He was like, "I might trust the doctor to remove a splinter or lance a boil. I do not believe he has the knowledge to restore a brain." And McCoy's like gave this awesome decrescendo when he just goes like, "Thank you."
Yes.
It was awesome. That was a really well delivered line. I
was.
like that.
Yeah.
You know.
All right, so to find out what we will be discussing next week, just follow us on social media at It's Got Star Trek. And that's on Twitter and Facebook and Mastodon and Instagram, YouTube. Definitely sign up on YouTube. If you wanna listen to the podcast that way.
Snapple Stams. And
Rate and
Jingle
review.
Bangs.
That really helps us. You know, if you have any inclination to help us, you know, put a nice little rating, a nice little review on Apple iTunes or Apple Podcasts, whatever service you might use. But otherwise, I think that'll
Criticisms.
do it. That'll do it. Yes, criticisms are fine.
Did
too.
you notice how like the whole part where she pulled the gun on them and like that was another lazy scene because like the way they thwarted her pulling the phaser on him? Carrie?
Yeah, what the hell?
Scotty
happened
just
there?
did some like very like fake out.
He
was like
almost fainted.
He was
or
like,
something?
"Oh, I'm almost fainted," and then he just grabs the gun for her. That was some lazy shit.
Yeah, it was a false threat.
And then when Scotty's like trying to find Spock's signal, he like rotates quickly 90 degrees.
Yeah.
He's like, "I got it." And it's like, what the
Like
fuck?
it's a compass.
Yeah, right. Look at some rabbit ears on a TV.
All right. So
Do kids know what the rabbit ears are?
much to Dan's chagrin, no doubt, we will now be ending the podcast.
Let us never speak of this episode again.
But
What did all those buttons do? What did all the other buttons do?
we'll talk to you
Why was Spock so big?
around this time
You're thinking of the wrong episode.
next week.
Oh, they happen to have 3 hours left until
3
it took
hours.
3 hours to perform the surgery, or 3 hours of brain power to perform the surgery, and they had 3 hours until they hit the 24-hour mark. At which point, at the 24-hour mark, there's no goings back with Spock.
There's no goings back.
Goings back.
All right. Well, yes. All right. Well done, Dan. For real though.
For real though.
For real though.
For real though.
You insist upon yourself.
I insist upon myself.
For real though.
That was from Family Guy.
We'll talk to you all next week. Bye bye.
This is fascinating. A remarkable example of a retrograde civilization. At the peak, advanced beyond any of our capabilities, and now operating at this primitive level, which you saw. And it all began thousands of years ago, when a glacial age reoccurred. You see, this underground complex was developed for the women. The men remained above, and a male-female schism took place. A fascinating cultural development of a kind which has...
it was wrong. I shouldn't have done it.
What's that?
I should have never reconnected his mouth.
Well, we took the risk, Doctor.
As I was saying, a fascinating cultural development of a kind which hasn't been seen in ages. The last such occurrence took place on old Earth when the Romans were warring with the Greeks.